If I had to guess, I've probably asked this question to a few thousand people over the past several years. I save it for toward the end of a training session or a group coaching session that I'm leading because I want the room to have worked through several other deep conversations first, because at that point, they're warmed up and they've been thinking already and they've been talking with each other and they've probably heard themselves say some things that maybe they didn't expect to say, which is always great. And that's why this question that I'm going to share with you in a minute, people don't hesitate. They end up jumping right in one after another. And it's not long until the whole room is really leaning into this question. So in a moment, I'll tell you what the question is, but also why it's really fascinating to me. Well, hey, I'm James, and you're listening to the Leadership in 5 podcast. So I'm going to keep you in suspense for just a couple more seconds about the question. But the reason that I said the responses are kind of fascinating to me isn't about the answer itself. It's how certain people are with their response. So the question that I ask that gets people going is this: is trust earned or is trust given? Years ago, when I started using this in my business and my coaching with clients, I was kind of surprised because I originally thought that question might slow people down. It actually doesn't. Most people tend to answer fairly quickly. They answer fairly confidently also, because you hear them say things like, well, hey, James, for me, trust is earned. And they say it with this certainty to this degree where they're almost proud of it. And I don't mind that. I think that's kind of cool. But others, they may have a different response, but they say it with that same level of certainty. They'll say something like, well, I believe in giving trust until you give me a reason not to. And if you break it, we're probably done. I've heard that so many times, and I can tell when people say it with the tone that they use, the certainty again that they use, that they've probably gone through a few situations where maybe trust has been betrayed. I think all of us can relate to that. And it's in those moments when they start to explain why that you see that these aren't just beliefs that are theoretical for them. They show up actually in their actions. They talk about it in ways that maybe they hire or delegate, or even ways that they respond when something goes right or wrong with their business. I remember one moment in particular where I was with a client. We were in a room and there was a group of senior leaders present and a couple of the owners. I worked them through the same question: is trust earned or is trust given? And if I remember right, every person in the room in that particular group responded that trust is earned. And as usual, they went around the room and they explained it. Some even felt like they wanted to defend it, but they all were very confident about where they stood. Now, the last person to go that day was one of the company owners, and he said something that stirred the whole room, because he said, listen, guys, I get it, but I got to tell you something. I had to throw the idea of earning trust out the door quite a long time ago, because if you sit where I sit, I have to extend trust first. He wasn't trying to just be different or use it as some kind of wisdom leadership moment. He was describing his reality from his own vantage point. And he wanted them to understand, because he explained it this way, that every time he had to hire somebody, he was already having to extend trust before that person had ever proven anything. He didn't have the luxury to wait for trust to be earned. You don't normally get to bring someone in before they're hired, so they get to earn your trust. That very process of hiring required him to give it first. Now, I'm a watcher of people. It's part of what I enjoy doing. It's part of my training. And I read body language and I try to observe emotional responses. Now, I try not to also jump to conclusions, but there's a pattern that you kind of see, especially when you get familiar with people. And as he said that, and everybody else had the opposite answer, you could see that people were kind of replaying their own thoughts and their response in their mind, probably because they had never really thought about trust from that angle before. Now, that moment stayed with me because it revealed something that I don't think most leaders do think about to this level, that trust does often start before it's earned or gained or proven, not after. The owner, from his standpoint, and I think you might see also here, he was right. When you hire someone, you are extending trust before the proof exists. To some degree, you have to trust their resume, you have to trust their references, and you also have to trust your own conversation and your own feelings and your own observations that you had during the interviewing process. So where are you with this? Would you agree more often than not that trust starts before you actually have proof? And that's where most people's thinking gets challenged on this, because if trust starts before it's proven, then leadership responsibility actually begins way earlier than most people realize. Not after someone fails or when something goes wrong. It changes how people think about leadership and hiring and delegation, all of it. Because once trust is extended, what happens next, it truly does determine everything. So let me give you something to reflect on this week. For you, is trust earned or is it given? And if you have a strong opinion about it, maybe just pause for a minute and ask yourself why. Where did that belief come from? Because how you answer that question may reveal more about your leadership than you actually realize. And trust me, this conversation doesn't stop here, because once trust exists, something else can move in to take its place. We're going to need to talk about that in the next episode.